preference pronoun is he or they. I usually require a preference pronoun to start the language. Like preference pronouns. Preference pronouns also. It's he. He. Guys, preference pronouns. She.
Leroy, he or they.
He or they. That's he. Great. This is beyond ground rules. So if you have any phones, not silent mode, please switch to the silent mode. Secondly, if you have to leave the room, please don't do that during speeches. So wait until the speech is over and then walk out. Thirdly, try and keep conversations to yourselves, get distracted with waiters and Alright, guys. With that, the second motion, the third motion we're debating on is legitimate for protesters to shut down rallies of Trump. I would request the Prime Minister to press the button. Please, right we're beginning or does it have extra A4 sheets?
Yeah, that's it.
We're using the gatekeepers, I think, you know, some extent, yeah.
Mr. Speaker, our stance today is very simple. We believe that protesting in a political rally, any political rally, is a legitimate form of political expression and gives voice to the masses that would otherwise not have been heard in that very same sphere. We believe that if such protests were in the long run or in due course be a result of a rally getting cancelled or removed, we think that's perfectly fine, right? So we think that ultimately, at the end of the day, at the core of it, protests are all legitimate forms of political expression. If they result in a rally being cancelled, so be it, perfectly fine, to protect the ability of individuals to engage in protests as a legitimate form of discourse, right? So let's take a look at status quo and what's exactly happening, right? So as you all know, Donald Trump is going around spreading all these really hyped up and positive violent rallies, right? But more than that, it's the content of these rallies that we have an issue with, right? So when you're a presidential candidate and you're talking about things like policies, so on and so forth, it's all fine, right? You are protected, you have freedom of speech, so on and so forth. At the point, however, when you cross the boundary into infringing upon the well-being of innocent citizens in the country, we think that it is at that point in time that your freedom of speech should and must be curtailed, just as any other ordinary citizen in the country, right? So one of those things that he's telling the masses, right? He's telling the masses that all Mexicans are rapists. He's telling the masses that, you know, Muslims should be temporarily banned from America because they are possibly all ISIS, right? So you take all these kinds of verbal assaults, especially on such a wide media coverage, are an assault on the well-being and the fundamental core nature of the audiences and what it actually means to be an American citizen, right? Something that ultimately, in the long run, these individuals will feel ignored, right, by American law, right? By running for a presidential election somehow gives you immunity from state laws, right? We think this is the fundamental problem that we have. So what's the solution, right? We're perfectly happy if protesters take to the streets and take to the rallies and eventually shut these rallies down, right? Shut these hate rallies down, right? So we think that this is the only possible solution in such circumstances. Why is this so, right? Because Donald Trump himself, as a presidential candidate, is afforded special, unique rights that ordinary American citizens do not possess, right? Just being protected, right, by the American Secret Service and being immune to several laws and bills, right? So we think that all these kinds of things gives him the right to say extremely important things in his rallies, right? And we see that these are the kinds of important things that he says in his rallies that are directly impacting the lives of individuals and audiences who listen to his rallies whatsoever, right? So let's take a very close look at who these protesters actually are, right? We think that these protesters are innocent American citizens who live their lives day to day, but at the start of Donald Trump's campaign, immediately feel attacked, immediately feel assaulted, and possibly even like disenfranchised by what he says, right? So we think that especially given the massive amount of support that Donald Trump has somehow managed to garner, we think that this actually escalates into possible violence and in a very long run, like xenophobia towards these kinds of people that get marginalized, right? Like Mexicans, like Muslims, right? I think these are the kinds of people that actually have their very daily lives overturned, right? I think that for them to live their lives as an ordinary American citizen, they'll be extremely difficult, right? Especially after these rallies are all over, we don't think there's any recourse that these individuals can go to. I'll explain why is this so in my three substantives, right? So first substantive, why are these protests legitimate? Second, why are Donald Trump's rallies equivalent to hate speech? And lastly, why is there nothing and why is there no other form of recourse available to such victims, right? Yeah, sure.
If it's indeed free speech, why can't the government prosecute free speech?
Because of the simple fact that he is an American candidate, as a presidential candidate, right? Being a presidential candidate in America across to several rights to present a case, right? He's directly protected by law enforcement simply because he is a presidential candidate, right? I think that this unique position that he has been abused severely by him to reinstate and to impose upon extremely hateful rhetoric against the masses, right? So why are these protests legitimate? We think that in all circumstances, protests insofar as they are peaceful and non-violent always have a fixed and respected amount of political capital. So why are these protests actually available in the first place, right? Because we think that the kinds of people engaging in these kind of protests are individuals who have no other form of recourse, that have nowhere else to turn to except to go onto the streets and to voice their opinions. Because clearly, and given what Donald Trump is saying, he has no form of legal impediment placed on him. Therefore, these individuals feel attacked. These individuals feel isolated by the very law that protects them and feel ignored by the very law that protects them. And that this pushes them to the streets to invade Donald Trump's rallies, to show and to make their voice heard, right? Because we think that these individuals have an intrinsic motivation and intrinsic interest to stop these kind of rallies from continuing on, right? Because of Donald Trump's rallies, there are individuals standing in the country is being attacked, right? The individual standing as a respected American citizen is being attacked, right? So we think that even in cases whereby these protests escalate into violence, we think that they only escalate into violence due to a lack of law enforcement, right? So insofar as these protests remain calm and remain non-violent, I think these protests always have some standard political capital tied to them, right? So we think that these individuals, right, have an intrinsic right to engage in such protests because they have a right to do so, right? But second, why are Donald Trump's rallies equivalent to hate speech, right? So like we already told you, Donald Trump's rhetoric are extremely unique in the sense that he divides the people of the country apart. He segregates and marginalizes groups of people that he views as being minor, as being not insignificant, and then being potentially for some real cosmic reason just hates them in general, right? So we think that these kinds of rhetoric, insofar as they harm the very standard on which you can call yourself a human being, is no different from hate speech, and therefore deserves to be shut down. And the very same reason why he's not being shut down in the status quo is because he's running as a presidential candidate, and he's accords some special rights under the law to remain immune from such attacks, right? From such law enforcement, right? So third, why is there no other forms of recourse, right? We think that these individuals who engage in these protests have nowhere else to turn to, right? Because the police can't do anything about it, law enforcement can't do anything about it. They have no choice but to at the very least get their voice heard, right? If they can even send one message across to the media about Donald Trump's true intentions, we think that at that point in time, there is already an agreed amount of there's already some intact benefit, right? So we think that if push comes to shove and these rallies, and these protests do shut down Donald Trump's rallies, then it's fine, right? So we have it for protesters, right? But we think that ultimately, at one core of it, these protests should not be ignored, and these protests are perfectly legitimate in the sense that insofar as they're not violent. For all these reasons, very proud.
Mr. Speaker, let's talk about what has been happening at Trump rallies. The protesters that okay. What has been happening at Trump rallies? We think we disagree that there are peaceful protests towards these rallies, that these protesters, again, these protesters have essentially been incredibly violent in wanting to stop those rallies. What they basically do is that they collect outside and they shout until they drown out his voice, so that people who came to those rallies cannot even hear what he's saying. We think that the rally in Mississippi is a good example of how violent these protesters towards these rallies can be, where they would run towards Donald Trump and and stop him, and the rally would have to be stopped at that particular point. So we think that these are all things that are very, very regretful. What am I going to talk about in my speech? First of all, I'm going to talk about how all people have a right to political opinion and that they are entitled to it. Second of all, what is the best way to obliterate harmful ideologies about being counterproductive? The third of all, how under their side you are validating the harmful rhetorics that they wanted to get rid of in the first place. But first of all, rebuttal. We are okay with things such as arresting disruptors, because we think that it's important for people to have a freedom to obtain information, that people should be able to express a freedom to political affiliation, to political ideology, for as long as it doesn't cause a direct third party. But second of all, we think that Donald Trump has always been. We think that we want to disagree that Donald Trump has enjoyed immunities under the law, right? We think that Donald Trump has not, so far, incited actual hate speech, or in other words, galvanized people to carry out attacks towards other people, right? Because at the point that he is crossing his limit to his freedom of speech, he will be charged under the law. We disagree that he has these immunities that they accuse him of. We think that presidential candidates will be free from civil defamation, but not criminal defamation. Right? This means that the state will never be impartial towards any presidential candidates or anybody. Right? We think that America, insofar as what they've gone through as a state, they will still not be impartial. Right? And if there is in fact hate speech that is happening, that he will be prosecuted just like other individuals under the law. The third rebuttal is this: when minorities disrupt Trump rallies, they entrench the rhetoric that they are in fact disruptful, that they are in fact harmful towards society. We think that harmful rhetorics like this, such as that they are terrorists because they are subjecting to violent reactions, at the point where protesters create a climate of fear to want to rally to the rally attendees and want to cause them to feel fear to want to express their political opinion. We think that is going to validate rhetorics that are harmful for them. First of all, what I'm going to talk about in my speech, that all people have a right to political opinion and that they are entitled to it. This is a universal belief, right? The UDHR acknowledges your right to political affiliation. It doesn't matter what people essentially believe in, because despite whatever happens or despite whatever these people say, you cannot stoop to a point where you want to resort to violence, to take matters into your own hands and solve them by your own arbitrary means. We think that above all, countries have to be governed by principles of the rule of law, where you uphold inherent human rights and you uphold the law before other people's arbitrary judgment. Right? Even if you are extremely convinced that somebody is a murderer, you still leave it up to the justice system for them to decide whether or not they are guilty or innocent. We think that you have to uphold laws over arbitrary judgment, and that is how you show these supporters what consists of a rational America. Right? We think that in a democracy, we have to recognize the right to political affiliation, and it is recognized by constitutions universally. You cannot come up here and simply say that just because he has ideologies that we don't agree on, and therefore this universal right is alienated away from him. We think that supporters of Donald Trump, however disgusting you find their opinion may be, have this right to political opinion too, and that we are proud to support. But second of all, what is the best way to obliterate these harmful ideologies without being counterproductive? We think that what people who are against Donald Trump up to this point have been doing it the right way. Because if a particular opinion is repulsive, we should encourage the use of cool and own rational reasoning in judging matters that are more opinionated in nature. Because at the end of the day, what we have to understand is that it is the silent majority that is going to be adjudicating or deciding which party, which party in the bipartisan system essentially wins in the end. These silent voters are going to be the core determinant, and they are watching the move of every single person, of everything they see on the news. If they were to see that protesters towards these rallies are violent, you are only putting them down to a point that they believe that these people are just as crazy and fanatic as the people who attended these Trump rallies. At that point, you show to the world that there are crazies who are disapproved of these sort of ideologies, and that is extremely counterproductive. We have to show that at the point that we have to maintain the status quo, which has been effective up to this point. We have to understand that people's minds, are malleable through discourse. We cannot simply assume that because these rallies are taking place, because people have attended them, then therefore these things are being empowered, right? Because it's extremely pernicious at the point that nobody does these things or wants to shut down the rallies of other candidates, and it is unfair that you only subject one particular candidate towards to this sort of treatment. Yes, anybody? You're right. No, okay. So third of all, what I'm going to talk about is how their policy essentially validates these extremely Donald Trump's extremely harmful rhetoric. Because we have to understand what their policy essentially. What their policy essentially does is empower rhetorics and instill fear into the institution, like that the institution has never worked for these people, saying things that nobody cares about these white middle class, the white middle class community, and that these minorities are disruptive and are violent, and America needs to get rid of them. At a point where you encourage these minorities to want to come up and be violent and be irrational, you're validating this claims. We're very, very proud to oppose.
Speech, guys, this is a really noisy sort of environment, so it's best if you speak as soon as possible to everyone sitting in the room. And secondly, it's best if you keep your own time. Even if you're not paying attention to time, but it's hard for you to listen to the anyway, I'll find the identifier that's a quick set of all the things right here.
These are two very simple questions that I'll be answering today. First, to what extent is the freedom of political expression universal, or any form of expression for that matter, which is primarily the empire's future from the other side? Second, when is it principally justified to protest or to even go to the point of rioting, to take away that freedom of speech? Before that, let me deal with the point of contention that has come up so far. First, the idea of violence, right? And this was a big issue coming from the other side. It's very telling that the only example they had is that people go there and scream really, really loudly to drown out the volume, right? The other example of violence, this is the only one that has happened so far, is that people are throwing shoes and people are charging towards it. We think that is a security issue. We do not condone people charging at Donald Trump to punch him. We do not condone people coming out at him with the intent to harm or the intent to attack him. However, we also think that that same principle rhetoric should apply to Donald Trump. The moment the other fellow gets kicked out, the first thing that Donald Trump says is, back in my day, that guy would have been beaten up. That is inciting violence, ladies and gentlemen. When a certain individual comes up and incite violence against people who do not protest it, we think that is absolutely important, right? And we'll explain that more later. You will get your chance. Second, talking about freedom of political expression, ladies and gentlemen, we completely agree. I think there was a concession coming out from Prime Minister's leader of opposition speech. She goes, political expression is fine to the point of third party harm. Now that was practically the entire 7 minutes of their speech, explaining where the third party harm exists. Now, that was completely disregarded by the others. I'm going to repeat it to hope that they engage in their next speaker. Right? The idea of third party harm doesn't necessarily mean that you run to a person and punch him in the face. You inciting the violence, you creating hate speech to, incentivize people, galvanize people to attack or to disenfranchise certain people in society is something that we can never stand for, right? We think that is a rather simple idea that everybody can get behind, right? We don't think that it's a very good system. After which, she gave us the alternative. Guys, let's just leave it to the judiciary system. They will deal with it. If it doesn't work, let's always civil liability. People get charged in court, people are trying to sue him. He's Donald fucking Trump. Nobody in their right mind will want a legal battle with Donald Trump. The only reason people have resorted to running to him at their rallies is because every other form of expression has failed. They have tried throwing their support behind candidates they don't like, both not changing. They have tried having social media rallies, like literal social media gatherings, like just to go up and talk about Donald Trump, to have that sort of discourse. Nobody is listening. When it comes to presidential debates, when people ask him questions that he does not want to answer, he either evades or he talks about the American dream, which people cannot stand behind. You try to get him to engage, you try and get the discourse going. When it doesn't happen, you turn to law enforcement. Right? When law enforcement, on the other hand, protects the exact same guy that is harming the core of your very identity, which he did with the Mexicans, which he did with the Muslims, we don't think we can ever get behind that sort of speech. Give me a minute, right? My final rebuttal first on the idea that the silent voters are watching. At the end of the day, it will kind of fix itself. If it happens, I'll be the happiest man alive. I'm serious. We would love that. But at the moment, the violence that he's inciting, the sort of hate speech that he's, pushing for in the open, is irreversible damage. Right? The moment people automatically buy into his paradigm, yes, Muslim people are all my terrorists, they might all be terrorists, or Mexicans are the reason why the economy failed. That's when the people feel. That sort of feelings within the people will never go away. Because even though the rallies are over, and even though the silent voters have already voted and thrown Trump out of the party, the sort of feelings that were brought up, the sort of feelings that were magnified because of the Trump rallies still exist, creating really obvious social harm. Right? I'll take your point.
There are some people who believe that Bernie Sanders is a communist and will cause threat to the country. Are you okay with people violently shutting down Bernie Sanders' campaign also?
I am okay with people protesting against campaigns. I'm not okay with people punching him in the face. That's where we draw the line, right? We don't think that the moment you have an intent to cause harm, we do not condone that. Right? We are not okay with that. But we think, regardless of the political candidate, it doesn't need to be Donald Trump. It can be Bernie Sanders, it can be George Bush, it could be President Obama. We don't care. We think the right to political freedom exists, and if you want to show your support behind another candidate, or you want to show your dissatisfaction with any candidate, we are perfectly fine with you protesting outside the limits of the rally. Right? You want to scream for the people candidate, go ahead. You are perfectly fine with that. We think that is very well within your rights. Moving on to my substantive. First, to what extent is freedom of expression universal? This is why I extend on Darren's point of third party harm. He spoke about how the harm is obvious because of the core identity of the individuals that have. Right? Ladies and gentlemen, that is clear, right? I think the moment an individual feels that his liberties are being attacked, and there's no other alternative to take, he's perfectly legitimate to take that one alternative that does exist. Screaming at Trump is what you do when you lose an argument, right? You scream at the person, you lose everything is perfectly fine to do that, right? I think it's perfectly legitimate for an individual to come up and go, well, my identity is being damaged. The very core of my children aren't able to go to school because the other people are thinking that my Mexican kids were going to grow up and rape my daughters. We don't think that that's the right rhetoric to be pushing for. We don't think that these ideas should be even brought up in the first place. That's why hate speech is banned. This is why we don't allow people to just go up on the stage and go, guys, all black people suck. No, and we don't think that presidential candidates have a special sort of arrangement to get away with that, right? We don't think they deserve that arrangement. Currently, they're being protected. They were going, well, no, he will be charged with hate speech. Fine. Let's say, I think your best case scenario, he is charged with hate speech, right? He comes up again, he says it again. That's exactly what happens, ladies and gentlemen. People have brought up dissatisfaction. Even the current president has brought up dissatisfaction with what he was saying. However, after the president brought up dissatisfaction, that was literally the end of it, right? At the end of the day, the only sort of actual action being taken against Donald Trump is a tweet from President Obama. We don't think a tweet is good enough, ladies and gentlemen. We think it is about time that people take that change, right? We think it's perfectly legitimate for people to take that stage, right? In 1969, there was the Stonewall riots, and those riots, like, they paved the way for gay rights to move forward, right? The Stonewall riots until now are being commemorated as the Gay Pride Parade. It is perfectly fine if that one protest or that one act leads to a social change or leads to Donald Trump not being the president, right? What you do essentially is people have a political idea, people feel very strongly about certain things. It's perfectly fine for them to go against the sort of dissatisfaction they have in Trump, right? To go out and go, we don't like him, and we want to tell you we don't like him. I think it's perfectly legitimate to do that. We have no reason to go against it apart from political expression. Right? We've already brought you the third party up, and it should be obvious. Right? All this causes fail, there is no other alternative. If they have one, I'd like to hear.
Sorry, let me hurry.
Sure, you can speak from back there.
Why?
Sure, you can speak from back there. I'm okay if you're okay with it.
I'm quite loud, is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about why everyone has the freedom to receive information and why it's a fundamental human right. Secondly, I'm going to tell you why your policy is actually counterproductive. You're strengthening Trump supporter base more. And thirdly, I will tell you why exactly you convince the silent majority wrong. But before that, a few rebuttals. Firstly, and most importantly, they took a freaking soft line right. They said we're okay with people shouting and have peaceful protesters, but we're not okay with people throwing shoe. Or in the video that we saw the other day, someone literally rushing towards Trump and was only stopped by a security, like Secret Service, and at that point they had to cancel the rally, right? Mr. Speaker, I guarantee you, Google after this debate, for every single reason, every single time that the rally has been cancelled, it's because of a threat of violence or to Trump's body itself, not because of people simply just shouting, right? If it's peaceful protest, no rallies will be shouting because of that. So they must defend disruption to the point of causing violence to the supporters or even Trump's body itself, which have been grossly negligent in proving their burden. But secondly, even if you want to engage on the very strong paradigm, we say the point where you engage in shouting and destroy is an extreme disruption to the point where this really has to be cancelled. You are impeding the people's right to have political information, right? And it is such an important right, which I will articulate to you later. But secondly, they said nobody wants to sue Trump because nobody wants to take on Trump in the rule of law. But that's ridiculous. They are saying that if you feel that you have no chance to win a lawsuit against somebody, it is justified for you to bring things into your own hands because you don't think you can mount a legal battle. So we think that is an extremely abhorrent view of the rule of law because they are literally condoning violence and sidestepping the judicial system. But secondly, even if they want to take Trump to court, it's not those individuals who take Trump to court in a criminal defamation case. It's literally the public prosecutor who will do an investigation as to what Trump is saying is legal or not. Only then they use their resources to prosecute Trump. So I don't see how your point stands. But thirdly, they told us that, oh, you know what? People will buy into his paradigm if his rallies are allowed to continue, and that's a harm. But if you shut down his rallies, people are going to buy into his paradigm more. Why? These people, they come to Trump rallies in order to see his policies, to see his views, to see whether his views literally match what they saw in the media. If you allow them to listen at the rally, they might decide not to agree with Trump, or they might decide to agree with Trump. But at the point where you shut Trump down, you literally give them a visceral reaction as to what he's being shut down, he's being persecuted. This means what he's saying must be right to the extent that these Mexicans and these protesters want to visceral reaction and buy everything Trump wants to tell them instead of reacting logically at his rallies because you are the one who resolves the violence. Now, fourthly, they said they are okay with people shutting down Bernie Sanders' rally too, as long as it's something that offends your identity. But that's ridiculous. There are people who are against Hillary Clinton because they think she's a corporate buyout. There are people who are against Bernie Sanders because they think she's a socialist. Running through your paradigm is legitimate for everyone to shut down every single political rally in the US at the point where they think it is offending their identity. We say this is a fundamental infringement of the right to vote because you are disallowing people from getting information as to who they want as the next presidential candidate, right? We say when your policy shuts down, like literally gives legitimacy for people to shut down political discourse using unpolitical or unrational means, this is the point where government has to step in. Now, lastly, they said that Trump is harming people because he is, and therefore it is legitimate for people to shut them down. But like I said earlier, firstly, this is people taking law into their own hands. Secondly, what he's saying is lawful, right? It's not hate speech. To the point where candidates say, look, let's not beat up some Muslims because I hate them. That is hate speech, and that is the point where the state can prosecute them for it, right? So like, damn well, if he really is spewing hate speech, you know that Obama would have loved to bring his ass to jail a long time ago. But ultimately, Obama can't do that. Why? This brings me to my third level of analysis. What he is saying is not hate speech, right? Things he says are ultimately connected to the lives of people in the United States. He's saying things like, maybe the Mexicans are taking our jobs. Things such as drugs and crimes are sweeping across the border, or we should deport illegal immigrants, or to the extent that we should stop those things from coming into the US because of terrorist attacks in Paris, because of Boston bombings, which particularly happened in US itself, and because of the bombing in Ankara. We think that these things, although they are a bit extreme, they do relate to national security, to the economy, to people's livelihood, and these are things that people should know about, not shut down and deprive of right. Yes, anyone?
So, at the point in which your individual's livelihood as a normal Mexican citizen is attacked when your neighbors start ostracizing you and branding you a rapist, how is that not hate speech?
Yes. People ostracize you and brand you a rapist. It is your duty to not prove them right? Like to act like a civil citizen, saying that, look, what Trump says is not true. But at the point that you react with violence and shut down his rally, that's when Trump supporters justify the hatred towards you. They say, look, Trump has a point. He is attacking Trump when he says that they are bringing crime across the border, they are making money off illegal activities. This is why people will hate you more, right? Now, firstly, why is it people have a right to political expression? In the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, Article 19, it says that people have the right to access information. Why? Accessing of information is viewed as the basis of all rights, like freedom to vote, freedom of expression. That's why the government cannot penalize you for reading a voucher or a book, because ultimately, the knowledge you receive from others is the way for you to articulate and formulate your own views and opinions, which will allow you to exercise your freedom to vote and freedom to speech. At the point where you are shutting down Trump supporters' rights to receive information from him, you are impeding on their very right to vote and freedom of expression because you are preventing them from getting information which they might want to articulate into exercising their rights, right? So we said by the very definition, you are already infringing their fundamental rights. Secondly, why will this bring a backlash towards Trump, right? Firstly, bring a backlash towards this community that I'm talking about. Firstly, two wrongs don't make a right. If you want to say Trump is violent and Trump is bad, the way for you to prove that is to act like a civil citizen and try to persuade people through your actions. But at the point when you attack Trump rallies, it's when you lose more moral ascendancy. Even if you keep shouting, you lose more ascendancy. You people do as I say, not do as I do. That's when people will tend to believe your rhetoric of non-violence less. But secondly, you let Trump let the victim cut. Because when people look at Trump rallies, they are saying Trump who's getting attacked, right? People are going to be more sympathetic against Trump, and this justifies Trump's concentration complex as to his reasoning that, look, I'm going to make America great, and this people are against making America great. That's why they are attacking me. You are acting in an irrational way, which actually hurt your supporter base even more. But lastly, I told you how this will actually cause people to hate minorities more, at the point where a lot of these supporters, a lot of these disruptors are actually like minorities like Muslims and Hispanic, who only justify Trump's hatred to these supporters. And when the silent majority sees minorities disrupting the speech, they are going to believe in Trump's rhetoric and they are going to persecute the minorities and vote for Trump come 2016, right? So for all these reasons, we have never been prouder to defend the freedom of speech, even when it's not Trump.
throughout the entire speech, they have been saying that, hey, Trump can say this, Trump can do this, Trump has the freedom to say this, but we should act rationally, and when he can't do it rationally, he can't control what he can say and what he actually harming people outside. And when those people get harmed, they are supposed to sit down, be calm, so that society doesn't judge them as how Donald Trump wanted them to be judged. So Donald Trump can do whatever he wants, but we can't. That's the thing, that's the problem that we're having here. This from throughout the whole speech is saying that, hey, Donald Trump can say this, Donald Trump can do whatever he wants. But when it comes to the people here, no, we can't speak, we should sit down, we should wait, we should vote, and we can't, and we just get harmed throughout the day. That's wrong. That's why we say that law is there. Law is there to protect Donald Trump from this thing, from violence, right? Like the police are there to protect him from violence. We don't condone the violence, like we say. We don't condone. If they do take a shoe and throw it onto his face, which is physical damage on his face, we don't condone that. The security guards are there to protect him from that. But what do we condone? Shouting. That's not violence. Shouting isn't violence. Just shouting to put over his voice. Anything without physical contact isn't violence. So basically, do anything you want, but don't hurt the guy. Simply, you can do it to Obama, anyone. We don't care. So, taking away information from the people, and that will not give, and that will actually, it's not good. It's not beneficial yet for them to vote, and they won't know what are the problems out there, what kind of issues that the US is facing. Information has been taken away from us our whole lives to protect us from certain things. Information has been hidden. Information, like for example, the CIA has hidden information that they call it. They do that. They hide this information so they have an advantage in the system, which actually protects us from terrorists. But what Donald Trump says aren't accurate information. They aren't information. They're extreme, are not factual information. He doesn't say some Muslims are terrorists. He says all Muslims are terrorists. He doesn't say some Mexicans are rapists. He says all Mexicans are rapists. So there's a big difference between being extreme and being normal. So that's the big difference between information. When you go extreme and when the information harms someone, it's called hate speech, which is not what we want. And when this hate speech can't be taken care by the government, by the law, it has to come out to the hands of the people. When the law can't take care of this hate speech, and like they say, that the people can sue them in the civil but we're saying no, that's not true. And you can get a person to investigate and all. It's not true. It only happens in the criminal court. It doesn't happen in the civil court. Yeah, and okay, so now I'll talk about the third party harm. What third party harms are there? On their side, there is no protection of third party harm. Donald Trump can say anything he wants, even though he becomes president or he doesn't become president, the harm continues. The harm is still there. His words are like that. Let's say he doesn't become president. He gained so much popularity from these things. He could just continue after this and doing stupid shit and telling the world about all this stupid shit and actually increasing this thing within people. Which will go, and people walking down the road will, who maybe have a slight sense of thinking this is right, and thinking like someone with so much power is saying the exact same thing what's in their mind, it would just increase that thought in their brain and think, hey, yeah, that girl in my school, a Mexican, I'm sorry, the guy in the school, Mexican, he's a rapist. He might rape my girlfriend, he might rape my daughter. Like, that's bullshit. Another thing is, what's called, there's no other way. When you restrict someone so much that you cause harm to them and they can't do anything about it, what else are they left to? To at least go out and shout about it, at least go out and protest about it. They need to do something to make change. So the minimum they could at least do is protest to make change. And
when people censor something, why do people believe in the things that is being censored more?
Why do people believe in the things that are censored more? Who said that people believe in things that are censored more? Like, I mean, like, there's just, you're just saying that there's no actual proof that people believe in things that are censored more. People sometimes, like I say, there are events going on, there are some Muslims which are terrorists. There is thoughts in your head like that.
But by Donald Trump making it even more extreme, it's just taking your thoughts and expanding it even more and putting it back in your head. We are trying to say these thoughts that he puts in your head are wrong. And the thoughts that he grows your head are wrong, which actually makes you cause harm to others. Okay, so social change. What about social change? Like from my second speaker, he said there is social change. Like, how did gays get rights? They went through a parade. They went through a they went through a parade and a protest and all to gain their rights. They need these changes. The law didn't take effect then. The law said that you can't say what happened to the law? The law isn't working right now. So we need people to come up to actually make the change. We need people to actually come up and show the world that and make this change. And this is not only affecting people in the US, it's affecting people all around the world. It's affecting people in Singapore, Malaysia, thinking that Muslims are like that. Thinking that Mexicans are like that. It's not only somewhere in one part of the world. And the difference between him and a normal person on the street is a normal person on the street has restrictions. You go on the street and the normal person on the street doesn't have much power. He doesn't have so much power. He just go on the street, he said this Muslim is terrorist. One person saying that one normal person saying that won't make a difference. Everyone will just go against him, he will go to jail. But a person like Donald Trump, who has gotten the power of a presidential thing in the campaign, is protected by many other things as this so-called freedom of speech because he's going for president, so you're supposed to hear his voice. Doesn't mean that anything that you go for, you can say anything you want. Words can make a difference. Words can harm people. Words can be bigger than actually hitting a person on the face. So I'm saying that. So basically, we are saying that this political way of protesting is legitimate. It's a good, and they have till now not shown one solution or another way that they could actually get rid of this Donald Trump or do anything. The only solution is silent voters. The only solution are silent voters. And silent voters are not a guarantee. We're not talking about when he becomes president. We're talking about the process to president, the harm to God. And we're proud to. Some of the freedom of speech is not absolute. It can be limited. Trump has immunity, and there's no other alternative. There's no other alternative that is the only remark. And lastly, social change. So that's the key. So before I move on to my issue, I just want to get rid of this one issue. We talked about information on how it's right for government to spread information. Wrong. That's why you have Freedom of Information Act. Wrong. When CIA hid information, we went into an outrage. When Edward Snowden dissented against the CIA, when Edward Snowden leaked information, there was an outrage. There was literally a public reform that divulged classified information. And here's the second level. When you ban something, people will look for it. You grant legitimacy to it. Case in point, China. When they ban books from China that deemed to be not fit for the public, people look for this kind of book. It grants them certain form of legitimacy. But that's just my issue. And that's taken on. So let's talk about my issue. Firstly, is it peaceful or not? Secondly, limits on free speech and immunity. Thirdly, power of discourse. Lastly, outcome. So let's talk about is it peaceful or not. Because they were having a false game that maybe it's peaceful, maybe it's not. No, if it's peaceful, it is status quo. Peaceful rallies are allowed in status quo. Therefore, what is your proposition? You have to propose something new. If it's peaceful, it is allowed in status quo. And secondly, if it is a peaceful rally, such as what you're saying, voicing out political opinion, why did those rallies got shut down? It got shut down because it was violent, it was disruptive. This was spoken by my two speakers. What happened? We started throwing shoes at Donald Trump. We started using microphones, loud microphones at Donald Trump. We started charging and punching him. That is the debate. That is the spirit of the motion. Whether or not it's okay for you to voice out your opinion in a violent manner. If it's so peaceful, then that is status quo. There's no contention. There wouldn't even be a debate. Okay. Secondly, limits on free speech. We see let the court decide. And there are two of this. Immunity, Trump is protected. My question is, what law are you referring to? What immunity are you referring to? They were flimsy, but people didn't even know what they were talking about. In actuality, there's no immunity granting presidential candidates certain powers or they are bigger than law. It's never the same. You are equal as every other human being. What did he talk about? He talked about criminal liability. If indeed you're committing a hate speech, that is a crime against the state. You can be prosecuted in the court by public prosecutor, your district attorney, your attorney general. Those are the branches of your legislative. You can prosecute them. I don't understand why you can't prosecute Trump. Trump is just another side. Trump is just another man. You can always protect. You can always prosecute him. Secondly, it is a person's opinion. It is a person's political opinion and political viewpoint. It is never justified to act in violence. Whether it is hate speech or not, it is never for us to decide. We always let the court decide. What you claim is wrong is just your opinion. It is never explained whether it is wrong or not. It is never ever justified for you to act violently because of this opinion. So, and let's talk about this whole opinion thing. Everyone is entitled to an opinion. This is what Nadia talking about. Those white middle class in Mississippi feel that they resonate with Donald Trump. Feel that this is the candidate for me. They kind of resonate with Donald Trump when they feel that maybe my job will lost to the Mexican. Maybe the NAFTA free agreement trade caused my job to be went to Mexico and China. That is their political affiliation, their political view. Who are you to say that it is wrong? You can say it's wrong. I'm okay with that. But you can't act violently. That's what the motion requires for you, and we disagree with that. It's never okay to do it. Thirdly, power of discourse. They say that there is no alternative whatsoever. Here's where we call bullshit. There is always alternatives to this sort of thing. For example, let's talk about counter-discourse, counter-narrative. There's a plethora of counter-narrative that's going against Donald Trump. You have presidential candidates like Bernie Sanders, like Hillary Clinton, that is standing in stark opposition to Donald Trump. Those are counter-narratives. Why can't you believe that? Secondly, there's also articles, published articles by scholarly individuals, the New York Times, that are always against Donald Trump. These sort of articles can create discourse and change people's mind. So you can't say that there's no alternative. Because there are alternatives, you must people talk about it. You can have forums, you can have online forums, constructive criticism and discourse as to why something is wrong. That's how you change people's mind. They say the damage is irreversible. We say, no, the mind is a malleable entity. You can always change people's opinion. You might be a racist one day, you might not be a racist tomorrow. The injection or the catalyst to that is discourse. You need to have discourse to catalyze this change. No mind is static. You can always change the mind. But once you resort to violence through a shoe, you're never going to change the mind. And our side is better because we persuade them to change their mind. And we reject this notion that your mind is going to change. But once you resort to violence, it doesn't work. Lastly, outcome before that, yes.
Assuming that those check and balances against presidential candidates exist, why hasn't Trump been charged with abetment?
Because maybe it's not hate speech. If it is hate speech, you will be prosecuted. It is your opinion that it is hate speech. We are not legal experts in this room. Legal experts are out there in the Supreme Court. They shall decide, and that's the debate. Let's talk about outcomes. Right now, the narrative that Trump has been always propagating is that I plan to make America great again. That no one wants to listen to you. And that's what people rallying around. People said that they had a figure to look up to. That they had someone who voiced their opinion. And that's what Trump has been saying. Trump has always been saying that the rest of the United States are afraid of you. They're afraid to listen to your voice. I'm here to speak for you. That is the message that Trump has been saying. Now, once you attack them, you're only validating them. That look, they're so afraid of you. They're so afraid of your personal viewpoints to the extent that they want to hurt me. They want to hurt all of you to the extent that our political rally got closed down. What does that do? Something that you are talking about. It strengthens their message. It strengthens whatever vile messages that you wanted to obliterate. And the effect translates to social conduct. Something you are talking about. Once you paint Mexicans to be terrorists, once you paint Islam to be terrorists, and then you have these people validating everything that Trump has said, these people are more likely to act violently to the people on the ground, people who are assaulted. You're more likely to act violently to the next president because look, you have assaulted Trump, you're proving what Trump said was right. Lastly, on the silent majority. How would they decide? If you want to propagate a message that Trump is wrong, you don't do it by doing a wrong, and you don't do it by doing exactly what Trump did. Two wrongs don't make right. Silent majority looks at value. Once you start publicly assault Trump in that manner, they don't see how are you different from Trump. They don't see, if you're saying Trump is violent, why are you faulting him? What principles are you standing for? Therefore, the silent majority are less likely to vote for him. And we think, if you disagree with Trump, it is unstrategic for you to do so. Lastly, social change. They say that in bits of pieces. How do you achieve social change? If you assault them, if you don't attempt to have constructive discourse with them, when you merely assaulting them, I don't see how their minds can be changed. I don't see how they would not become racist. If a person is a bigot, is a racist, and you go on and hit the guy in the face, I don't understand how the very next day they become a liberal. It's more likely to become racist. Under our side, we have constructive discourse where we believe everyone's minds are subjected to change. We can't read the alternate. No one is supposed to law, not including Donald Trump. I'm very proud of it.
Five issues in today's debate. Firstly, what exactly is the context? Secondly, whether this is reacting like as to like. Thirdly, right to information, possibly effect on minorities, and lastly, silent votes. Let's get right into it. Firstly, what exactly is the context? Government, in some way, decide to take an extremely soft stance, right? They say they are okay with peaceful protests and shouting, but not with violence or threats of violence that shuts down rallies. But I told, as I told you in my speech, things that have caused Donald Trump's rallies to be shut down are exactly the things that we saw on Fox, right? Someone running towards Trump, threatening to take him down, and the secret security had to shut it down. Or things like threats that we will find Trump and beat him up, right? So we tell you that the events that lead up to cancellation of these rallies are not those things that they want to talk about. But we told you, even if it is shouting, that's also against we say that's shouting that is excessive to the point where people are denied the right to political information and denied the right for information to exercise their legitimate choice of freedom to vote and freedom of expression. And we say that is illegitimate because you are infringing on people's rights in order to make a fully informed, calculated decision. Right. But second, so that point false. Secondly, Trump can do whatever he wants, but we can't do whatever we want. But that's not true. Firstly, we told you Trump can't do everything he wants. I don't know where they learn law, but as a law student, I can tell you Trump is still subjected to the same laws as everyone else. If he says hate speech, he will be persecuted. But like someone who says hate speech, right? If he kills someone tomorrow, he will still be charged in court, not given some presidential immunity like which they want to claim, right? To the extent where we don't persecute a normal person on the ground for whatever he's saying, even if he try to articulate Trump's views, we should persecute Trump for articulating the very same views. But secondly, even that example is a bit analogous. Because what Trump is doing is articulating his views through using his freedom of speech, right? He's not trying to prevent anyone or stopping anyone from relaying what they think or what they feel, right? Which is why Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton has not seen any disruptors, or Trump has not sent anyone to disrupt their rallies. To the same point, like if you do really want to react to Trump as he is doing, you should react like what we told you, using rhetoric, using rationality instead of using violence, because that is not what Trump is doing. Thirdly, the right to information. We told you how everyone has a right to information, because that is the very basis upon which you form your right to vote, right to freedom of expression, because you need information to articulate your thoughts. They say, oh, you know what, my government hides information, facts information from us all the time. That's not true, right? It only applies to things like military secrets or things like investigation into terrorism. At the point when government denies you the right to know things that are related to your everyday life, like things like the economy, national security, things like what Trump is saying, we say that it's illegitimate, which is why we brought you the example of what, when the government decided to censor all information regarding 2.6 billion of corruption, people see that as illegitimate because they are removing information which people base legitimate political choices on, right? This is why right to information was very important. That was never engaged by your side. Now, thirdly, fourthly, impact on minorities. You have to recognize this is the context that we told you that Trump's views are already out. Trump is already saying that these people are terrorists, these people are disruptors. At this point, we ask what is the most constructive thing for minorities to do? To act as civil citizens, to disprove Trump's rhetoric and delegitimize what he's trying to say, or you go into the very mode of what he's trying to cast you, right? You are saying, look, we are the disruptors that he's trying to say we are. We are the violent people that he says we are. They tell you this will only cause a silent majority in the people who actually vote for election to believe in Trump's rhetoric even more. We don't disprove it, but you prove Trump's rhetoric. Last thing, the silent voters. That's why silent voters are not guaranteed, right? But we told you silent voters are the ones who decide elections, and silent voters are slowly watching what's going on. At the point where they see you people who are trying to disprove Trump using the very same acts of violence and intimidation and irrationality that Trump is doing, you lose your moral ascendancy, you justify Trump's persecution complex, and will only cause him to win the next election because of how irrational and violent you guys are. For all these reasons, we are very proud to propose.
So, Speaker, in a world where a presidential candidate can go up to you and say, I think those protesters deserve to be beaten and these protesters deserve to be ousted from a rally, but when these victims cannot respond in time, I think there is a severe justice inequity in place here, right? So they told you that Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong, right? Because he's calling of Mexicans like rapists and dogs and whatnot, right? And how Muslims are always terrorists are not hate speech. He still, at the very least, still incites some degree of violence during his protests, right? These are things that are very controversial during his rallies, right? The things when you say, like, that protester deserves to be beaten up, or back in my day, the guy who deserves a beating, right? These are the kinds of things that incites violence within his own rallies, right? So the question at the end of the day is that how can these victims stand silent when they themselves are being oppressed by the very systemic kind of oppression that they face, even by doing that, right, to begin with, right? So, Speaker, I think that being silent in this case is never going to be an answer. Why is it so, right? So the question here is, what's the solution that is best for these victims, right? So they told you that it's best for these victims to remain silent and let justice take its course. The issue is this, right? Trump has been going on his rallies for months. Up to now, there's been no investigation by the Attorney General's chambers or whatnot, right? There's no level of suspicion done against him, irregardless of the kinds of contentious hate speech or the kinds of contentious weapon that he has engaged in, right? Because it's incited violence that is no different from a weapon, right? Because at the end of the day, there is no form of legal recourse that's available to this individual. But even if we were to accept there was some form of legal recourse to this individual, at the end of the day, what these victims want is not for, not just for Donald Trump to be prosecuted. If he can be prosecuted, fine. But at the very end of the day, they just want Donald Trump rhetoric to disappear. They just don't want Donald Trump to continue on his rallies, right? That's the whole purpose of them, right, trying to protest against Donald Trump, right? Possibly the angle of his rallies getting cancelled, right? It's good because if his rallies get cancelled, then it's less stigmatization against them, less attacks against them as an individual. Because we have to understand that Donald Trump's rhetoric specifically targets the very identity of what it means to be a Mexican in America, right? I think that this is the kind of extremely prejudiced speech that will influence the views of the majority, because we have to understand that Donald Trump's publicity grants him an exceptional spotlight, right? Because he has access to so much media, so much coverage. I think that it is this kind of rhetoric that will eventually harm these individuals, right? Because he can sway a large number of supporters to engage in the possible kind of violence that he himself incites and engage in the kinds of hateful rhetoric that he himself spreads, right? So I think that at the end of the day, these individuals just want Donald Trump to shut the hell up, right? So that's why they're trying to get his rally to be cancelled, right? So we think that at the end of the day, even if some form of legal recourse available to these individuals, it will not be sufficient, right? These individuals' identities are still getting destroyed with every Trump parade, right? So we think that at the end of the day, these individuals are the ones that are legitimate to engage in this kind of, right, of protest, right? So, Mr. Speaker, when I go to Donald Trump rally and I engage in a protest in Donald Trump's rally, right, I am not attacking himself as an individual, as a person. I'm attacking his rhetoric, his awful hate speech rhetoric that's attacking myself as well as all my fellow peers in my social group, right? So we think that at that point of time, when I am against his attacks on myself as an individual, I am justified to respond in kind, right, Mr. Speaker. Be it violence, be it shouting against protesters. At the end of the day, I am still attacking his negative rhetoric as I see as an infallible assault on myself. This is different from Bernie Sanders and like Marco Rubio's kinds of rallies, but they don't specifically target individuals as their core, right? They target policies, they target the current presidential regime, right? They don't target individuals at their core identity. We think this is the difference that Donald Trump does, right? He attacks individuals at their core identity, right? So we think that if he's able to do that and still get away with scot-free, we think it's high time that these protesters get something out of it, right? And they should step up to the occasion and at least try their very best to shut down these rallies, right? Because if not, their identity is going to get destroyed. So for all these equal victims, please go with us.
Yeah.